Zeke Elliott versus Cam Akers. It's time for another TFA throwdown. Both of them going off the board in the third round, back-to-back picks. Find out who's on whose side right now. All right, he's Kev Steele. I'm Robbie Jeffries, and we're talking Zeke Elliott versus Cam Akers tonight. Kev, I'm going to let you go first here. You got Cam. Why are we taking Cam Akers over Zeke Elliott?
I think this one's kind of easy for me. I think we've seen enough from Cam Akers to know that, at least from Sean McVay, that how much he loves Cam Akers. I mean, it was surprising to a lot of people whenever he came back from the injury that he suffered. The torn Achilles, right? And I don't know, maybe we need to start changing our thinking about this injury because we're starting to see more players come back from this a lot sooner. And we saw Cam Akers do it; it was kind of surprising. But now we just seen James Robinson also doing it. I mean, James Robinson's back at camp, and stuff like that, where people were not expecting him to be anywhere close to being ready. So, I mean, that was much more a bigger surprise as well that we weren't really expecting either. Is he ready for week one? We'll see. But regardless of that, we're seeing these players come back from these Achilles injuries much faster. Obviously, modern medicine has gotten better than what it was. Let's go back to 2020 where he averaged, 11.2 carries per game, 1.1 targets per game, 33 red zone touches in that year, 625 rushing yards, 123 receiving yards. We know he got hurt, earlier in that year, but then when he came back, I mean, he was great in that year. Then he comes back last year and plays more than what we really thought he was going to. But regardless of that, I think there's some takeaways here from his game log. One, a lot of people look at how he came back and say, "Oh, he was terrible," right? One, he was coming back without any training camp, without any work whatsoever. Got a little bit of practice in, and then he came back. And I think most people expected that he was going to come back. Maybe he was going to get, I don't know, 5 or 8 touches a game, and that was probably going to be it, right? More than anything than what he got. But that really wasn't the case. I mean, he came back and played a 20% snap share in Week 18, and then he jumps in and gets almost a 50% snap share with 17 carries in the wild card round, 24 carries in the divisional round, and then 13 and 13 in the championship game in the Super Bowl, right? But we have to remember the opponents that he was facing. Like these, outside of really the Cardinals, even the Cardinals, they were a top 10 defense against the run. But in the matchups that they were facing, the Bucks is one of the best run defenses in the league. The Bengals had really turned it around in terms of the run defense over the second half of the season. Like most of their opponents they faced, this was not an easy stretch of games for him over that either. But it was so much more encouraging to see how much he came back and how much they immediately plugged him right back into the offense. We know Sean McVay loves Cam Akers, and I don't see any reason to believe that that's going to change this year. Sonny Michel is gone. It's him and Darrell Henderson. I think Cam Akers is in line to get that workhorse role that we were expecting him last year when he was heading into the season. Now, in terms of the injury, he's had this entire offseason, no change there. There's been a lot of talk about using him more in the passing game. Now, one thing I will mention is the Rams have never utilized their running backs, even if you go all the way back to prime Todd Gurley. I think the most they ever got up to was, I think it was 21st or something like that in terms of running back target share to the running backs. They've never really utilized their running backs in that way. They run a lot of routes. Darrell Henderson ran a lot of routes last year. Sonny Michel ran a lot of routes last year. They just don't utilize them in that way. But I still think you could look at maybe possibly 3 or 4 targets per game, somewhere in that range. Not great, but also not terrible either for him. But I expect him to be the workhorse running back and one of the league's best offenses. I have no problem with Cam Akers, and I will let you now tell people about Zeke and why Zeke's such a great pick, and then I'm going to tell you why you're wrong.
That's fair enough. I'm just going to comment real quickly on the Cam Akers thing. Before he got injured, his explosive run rate was really, really bad, like 30th out of all qualifying running backs, like not great to begin with. And now we have an injury that nobody has successfully come back from. Not saying he can't, right? He's going to be the most talented and one of the younger guys that has sustained this injury, so he can come back from it. But will he be pre-injury Cam Akers? And pre-injury Cam Akers wasn't that explosive. So one, we have a lack of explosiveness. And then two, you kind of touched on it. You were saying 3 to 4 targets per game. When we saw a healthy Cam Akers, he was 1.5 targets per game. Like, he is not using the pass game at all. I don't know why that would change. So you have a guy that's not involved in the pass game, isn't explosive. That spells some scariness for me. And why I like Zeke, well, when Zeke's healthy and when he has Dak Prescott, he's a top 5 running back. He's been a top 5 running back with Zeke, with Dak, and when he's healthy. It's just the last 2 years we've had a lot of injuries, right? You and I have talked about this a ton of times, but when we look at Zeke weeks 1 through 4 of this year and weeks 1 through 5 of 2020, when he had Dak Prescott as a starting quarterback, he was a top 5 guy, right? He's getting 5.3 yards per carry. He's getting 7.5 yards per reception. He's the running back 5 in points per game. Like, there's nothing that you don't like about this guy being your starting running back and your first overall pick, right? In the first round. But okay, he gets a PCL injury in week 4 and he starts to lose work to Tony Pollard because they should have sat him out, but they didn't. So now they're splitting work, and he ends up being a running back 2 over the second half of the season, right? So he is currently being drafted as if he still has a PCL injury, and he's going to perform as if he still has a PCL injury. He's being drafted as if Dak Prescott isn't a starting quarterback and he's playing with Ben DiNucci or some of these other backups, Andy Dalton, that he had in 2020. But that's not the Zeke that we've seen when he's healthy. And we saw it just as early as last year in weeks 1 through 4. So I think we need to start treating him like he's that running back, and he needs to be focused into more of a top 12 guy. And if we're talking about injury concerns, right, between the two, I think Cam Akers is a much higher concern because we haven't seen anybody come back from that. So I'm the guy that normally tries to throw injury out of it. Running backs are going to get injured. It's how it always happens. And so who has that ceiling, and who's the guy you should be taking here in the 3rd round that has that ceiling to be a top 5 back? Well, we've seen Zeke do it year in, year out in his early career. And then these last 2 years, we've had some injuries, but he has that pass catching work. We've seen him with a 77 target year, and we've seen him with these touchdown years. So the ceiling's there with Zeke, and the floor, even with a PCL, is a running back 2. So he's being drafted where he would be if he was bad. And Cam Akers, there's a big pit if he's not good. Like, he could be replaced by Darrell Henderson. So there's just a little bit more red flag there. And so that's why Zeke's the easy choice. This was a knockout for me.
Well, I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. So, I mean, we can try to make every excuse we can for Ezekiel Elliott and why this happened or whatever. But the facts remain that he has just not been as efficient as a running back that he once was. Old Jerry Jones can sit around and talk about how, he's the focal point of our offense. Well, I'm sure he is, Jerry, since you decided to pay him a stupid amount of money that was a complete waste. I mean, really, the handling of Ezekiel Elliott since the moment they drafted him has been a mistake. They never should have taken him where they took him. They should have took Jalen Ramsey, but that's another conversation for another day. But the handling of him. But listen, he's not getting any younger. He is now 27 years old, or is soon to be 27 years old. He has had a ton of carries in his career. He hasn't been as efficient. We can try to wish away that, in the first 5 weeks. But you know what? We talk about Tony Pollard as well. Like, Tony Pollard wasn't involved. Tony Pollard was involved even before he tore his PCL, right? Because he had 3 against the Bucs, which they didn't run the ball at all against the Bucs. Smart game plan at week 1 last year. But then he had 13 carries, 11 carries, 10 carries, 14 carries, all in those first 5 weeks of the season before it happened, right? So he was definitely involved as a running back. Targets 4, 3, 0, and then 4 and 3 over that same span, right? We've heard all offseason how they want to utilize both of them, and maybe they use them both on the field at the same time. Tony Pollard is not going anywhere. He is not. It's not going to go back to a situation where Zeke is going to be handling the ball 20, 25 times a game and all that. Like, it's just not going to happen. One, he's a 27-year-old running back. If you want him to stay healthy, it would be really stupid to use him that way. Yes, he played through injury, whatever, but he was dog shit last year over the second half of the season. We can talk at all we want about his where he finished, because that's what everybody brings up. This is where he finished. Who gives a shit where he finished? All you should care about is fantasy points per game. That's what matters on a weekly basis. What is he providing you? He was RB15 in fantasy points per game last year, right? A little bit more of a drop off there than he's been a top 10 running back. Well, it's because he stayed healthy, right? Durability is a plus, right? But he's not somebody that's going to win your league. It's not going to happen. His win rate the last 2 or 3 years has been awful. His ADP is going to continue to rise. He's going to get much closer to an RB1 in terms of ADP than what Cam Akers will be. So we don't have like this large track record of being able to say, okay, well, this running back, like it was some elite running back, and then all of a sudden he had the injury, he's never come back from it. It's just a handful of shitty running backs that people like, we've never seen a running back come back from it. And we're trying to use that as like, well, see, he's terrible, right? And you talk about it, his burst and everything else. We're talking about a guy who has an 89th percentile on speed score and a 70th percentile on burst. Like, this guy has burst, okay? So we can throw all that out, suffered some injuries, right? But if Cam Akers is healthy, he's going to be the workhorse in this back.
Yeah, he can be the lead back in the offense if healthy, and that's a big if. And if he is healthy, he's still not getting the receptions. And we just talked on our last throwdown about how important receptions are. We know Zeke has that ceiling that Cam Akers does not. when you have bad Zeke, running back 2 is your floor, running back 1's your ceiling. It's case closed for me. You guys, everybody who's watching this video, go down in the comments. Let us know, did Kev win with Cam Akers? You're taking Cam Akers first. Did Robby win? Are you taking Zeke first? Let us know because we want to hear from you. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. Helps us grow. We really appreciate you checking out the video, and we'll see you on the next Throwdown.